While I get ready for our time of sermon, I'll just give Shelley a minute to find a seat, and that's fine. Keep it right there. That's fine. I've invited Heather to work with me this morning on creating a parade for Palm Sunday, and so we have brought together some perspectives of parades that will bring to mind the notion of a parade and what Palm Sunday, the original Palm Sunday, might have felt like from the different points of view. And of course, you know, when you picture a parade, there's pomp and there's ceremony, there's sometimes music and there's marching and lots of movement. But why was this a big moment? Why was the pausing important and the parading? You know, sometimes the parade might seem a bit frivolous because we have lots of important things to do, don't we? But in that moment, there's that sense of frenzy and hope and anticipation. People wanted to celebrate. They were hopeful that Jesus could overturn the powers that be, that his love and passion could take over the empire. And I know we tend to sometimes question the point of these moments, the resources and the time. And of course, we like being productive people. But something is lost if we don't take the time to honor someone's purpose and we don't take the time to honor these big moments in life. And so what I'd like to do through the sermon is we're going to sing a chorus as we enter into the sermon, and we'll have some reflection time, and we'll sing it again, and then we'll sing it at the end. And the tune we're using is called "And on This Path," and it's one that can help you bring to mind the idea of a parade and the way we would prepare ourselves to march towards what the song calls the Gates of Holiness. So I'll introduce that, and we'll try that one together. Sure. And so to start our reflection, we have a moment of reflection with a very humble animal, and I think there's a slide for that, Eric. So we'll just take some time to think about the perspective of the donkey.
On the outskirts of Jerusalem, the donkey waited, not especially brave or filled with understanding. He stood and waited. How horses turned out into the meadow leap with delight. How doves released from their cages clatter away, splashed with sunlight. But the donkey, tied to a tree as usual, waited. Then he let himself be led away. Then he let the stranger mount. Never had he seen such crowds. I wonder if he at all imagined what was about to happen. Still, he was what he'd always been, small, dark, obedient. I hope, finally, he felt brave. I hope, finally, he loved the man who rode so lightly upon him. As he lifted one dusty hoof and stepped, as he had to, forward.
And the next slide is a perspective from the disciples. And I chose the image of the sandals because we know there was a lot of walking and a lot of dry days together on the path that they shared with their leader, Jesus. Hot and dry and out of breath, feet aching, dusty sandals, tired and weary, but heart is racing, fluttering. We crew were like moths to a flame. This flame we gather around, he is light, he is love, he is promise. The flame is blinding, this vision he has. So many ways to describe his plan and what he sees. But for me, I simply say, it is everything. We've been chosen, fished from the ocean, plucked from a branch, summoned from our everyday existence. We have heard these rules that harm, that punish, that exclude, they are ours to question. And we have seen the weak empowered and the hopeless held, the sick strengthened, the excluded finally welcomed. The words he speaks, the tables he flips, those in power are not amused. I can smell the trouble. The noise he makes, it hurts powerful ears. This Jesus, he lives with purpose, with no apology. His miracles, this movement, this justice, he says, comes straight from the Maker. But the ones in charge, they're threatened. They say he's blowing smoke, but the heat is rising. My excitement since we've arrived is tinged with dread. I hate to think it, but those who sit in higher seats, would they extinguish his flame to preserve their empire, their power, their control? But for today we celebrate. Green branches snap, feet pound out the beat. For today we dance, today we march. Branches held high. We sing and we shout and we wave. We make the parade. We are the parade. We follow the parade. And this message and this leader, he deserves this pause for celebration. These palms are for a purpose. For today I feel a refreshing breeze flowing from the shimmering leaves. But it's enough to make me ask, are we celebrating or are we fanning the flames? And so again, we sing a song of heaven's welcome and the heart and soul of a palm parade. And our next slide features a picture of a real palm tree where Heather has traveled in Malawi and brings to mind the current day types of parades that we still see in the world and the perspective of the children.
I'm so blessed today to be wearing a tijenji, which is a piece of cloth that almost all the Malawians wear in some form or another. They carry their babies on their backs. I didn't see a stroller for the whole 6 weeks I was there a year ago Christmas. I went there to be the grandma under the tree. I have 4 grandchildren under 11, and soon, in 2 weeks, another new one. Malawi was an absolutely amazing time for me. It was like walking 2,500 years back in time. And yet, the beautiful Malawian people, with their resilience and their wonder at life and their sense of community, they put me to shame. They live each life with joy, slowly. In Malawi, you hurry up and wait. I saw donkeys tied to light poles. I saw goat herds weaving through traffic on busy highways. I saw little shepherd boys, and it is really shepherd boys, not like the ones we saw in our white Bibles that had the white robes and the shepherds who were standing there like this. It is young boys wearing tattered shirts and shorts and a small stick. And yet they loved their animals and carried them along. I wrote a poem for the Palm Sunday because in their country, when they have a celebration, they cut down palm leaves and they walk along the paths and they celebrate or they cry out in anguish as they have lost a loved one. I had never seen anything like it. And as you are going as you come up to a parade, people stop. They get off their bikes. They walk along with them. The cars on the road stop. And they celebrate each moment of life together. Have you ever been to a parade, watched the marching feet, or wondered what it's all about? What's so special on this street? Have you ever stood just to the side and seen a crowd go by? And each person in that crowd was waving a palm leaf high in the sky. I did this very thing. But where, I think you might just say? In Malawi, Africa, which is a country very far away. I was staying there a time, you see, with my grandkids and my son. And one day we passed by a parade that had only just begun. But no, we didn't really pass, for no one in that place ever just walks by on a march, but instead they stop and take their place. That's right, you've got it. We all take part and celebrate the day. And my Malawian friends and family do it in a very special way. They walk a lot in their little towns, for cars are very few. And so they walk along with anyone to celebrate. They do. First, some palm branches are collected, but they don't hurt the plant. Just enough to wave in the air, and then they begin to chant. They sing a song of joy and praise if the occasion is for celebrating. But if a dear one has passed away, they walk sadly with palm leaves waving. So on that day, when we caught up to the celebration train, we stopped our car right on the road, and everyone else did the same. Today, we celebrate a march that happened long ago in a far-off city of Jerusalem, where Jesus had to go. When people saw him on the path and coming near to them, the children ran to get some palms and wave them just for him. Someone lent him a donkey's colt to sit and ride a while. And all the people laughed and sang and walked with him that mile. Jesus loved them all, you see, and the people honored that. His friends laid down their dusty coats So the donkey had a soft mat. Now that's my story for today. And when you think of this little chat, may it remind you that in Malawi, people still make this beautiful walk. It's a good thing to honor the ones we love, or those like Jesus who bring peace and hope into our world and care for me and you. So when you think of Palm Sunday, think also of the way we celebrate our special gifts and the part that you can play. For some who we might meet each day are lonely and might be sad, but we can wave our branch of hope, and soon they will be glad.
And finally, the perspective of Jesus, from a poem written by poet Herb Stone. Jesus knew there was no question but to proceed. Sitting on that humble, balky donkey, hearing the cheers of the occupied, the oppressed peoples, facing the dark forces of the occupier's dominant system. And almost immediately, a confrontation occurs as the local religious authorities demand the crowd be controlled, and which Jesus rejects. And later, that evening, visiting the temple, seeing the money changers, Jesus looks around at the reality which surrounds him, and another confrontation and rejection by Jesus on Holy Monday. Jesus, the Prince of Peace, on a lowly donkey, with the people offering palms and cloaks, proclaiming the grace, love, and hope of God's kingdom. Pontius Pilate, the imperial Roman governor, on a war horse with a legion of the Roman Empire, proffering weapons of war, proclaiming the power and control and violence that is so common in the dominant empire. Yet sweet Jesus knew there was no question but to proceed, that when power is threatened and control fails, violence will commence. The empire will not stand the troublemaker and a liberator for long. Yes, Jesus knew, do we, his self-proclaimed followers, which proclaimed the procession we are in, the liberators or the oppressor's dominant culture, what temple we are in, the kingdom of God or the collaborators. This struggle continues before our very eyes, here and now. Every day, the dominant oppressor on the neck of the marginalized oppressed. Yes, Jesus taught us how to proceed the way of the cross and the eternal life. Oh yes, sweet Jesus knew there was no question but to proceed. Dare we, his self-proclaimed disciples and followers, follow. And our last slide just helps us reflect on the sky and the palms and the places they grow in warmer parts of the country. And so I wonder where today we have opportunities to pause and celebrate with purpose and honor today. Especially these days, you'll notice we've found ways around the gatherings we'd like to have, and they have become parades. Protest parades, pride parades, which began as a protest and now continue in solidarity and celebration. And now with the pandemic, birthday drive-through parades, ways to bring about the feeling of gathering and togetherness when we can't pull it off in a safe way, when things have to be different. And the most powerful parades I've seen recently have been more to do with the honoring and the bearing witness. We know for years we know about Remembrance Day and how those parades feel when we see the people who've fought for freedom lining up to march in the streets, and we remember. But I also think about the way people came together in solidarity and in protest with the death of George Floyd, and the way that people gathered in the streets to bear witness to his life and to commit to making change. So there was a time for honoring, and there was a time of remembering, and a time of committing to continue with the work and the recognition that what we must do to resolve injustice in our world. And closer to home, I know you've seen the stories sometimes in the cities, and for me, the stories I hear about are in the countryside. And the people who are getting close to the end of their life, they might have a final dying wish. And one that comes to mind is a friend who was a lifelong farmer and a business person, and he had just bought that perfect transport truck to deliver his goods. It was his wish was to get that truck and keep working with his family, and cancer struck. And before he died, it got written or it got spoken that his friend was going to be given the keys. And when the day came for his final journey, the funeral happened out in the countryside, and this friend took the keys and they started the trail around the countryside, and they did an act of bearing witness for this man and his life. And this friend drove the lead truck, and everyone followed with their tractors and their trailers and their pickup trucks in this silent memorial drive around the countryside. And I don't know if there's much that you can compare to the feeling of seeing people bear witness to each other in those ways, where people can come together and make eye contact and share the heart and soul of someone that they have loved. And so I say parades do have a purpose, and the Palm Parade certainly did. They mark time, and they combine celebration, and sometimes they incorporate sadness. And even like that parade centuries ago, the day was a combination of the beautiful and the terrible in life. And it has been said that in this life we are all just walking each other home. And what better way to be part of that walk of bringing our human family home than being part of that Palm Parade, just walking one another home. May it be so.